You're married to a Master Sommelier.
I am, yes.
Do you guys butt heads about like, do you ever ask his opinion on your wine?
I do. And we disagree quite a bit. I think it makes for a healthy marriage to not align, not be in agreement on everything.
Welcome to the Wine Centric Show. And as always, I have an incredible Titaness on the show today. She is the voice of the next generation of the Napa Valley winemakers. She is none other than Miss Maya Dalla Valle. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be on the show.
Well, Maya, not only is this really exciting to have you on the show, but this is the inaugural episode inside this beautiful wine cellar. And this wine cellar is in a Relaine Chateau property called the Farrington Village. We're in the restaurant. So I don't know if you're familiar with it, but we're about 15 minutes outside of Chapel Hill. It's an unbelievable oasis in the middle of Pittsburgh. So I highly recommend you get here and check it out.
Amazing. Well, I'm honored to be the inaugural guest, and I am definitely going to put it on my list for my next visit to North Carolina.
You're welcome here. We'll put you up, the whole thing, give you the royal treatment. The other thing is, I don't know if you know this, but North Carolina is really known for its equestrian ability. There's a lot of farmland. There's a lot of stuff. This is not an episode about North Carolina, by the way, but we're not going to even talk about wine this entire time. We're just going to talk about Geronimo.
Great. I'm ready for it.
How is Geronimo?
He's good. So his bar name is Nemo, and he's laid up right now. So he has a small injury. So he's taking some time off. And we're just spending a lot more time on the ground and walking and hanging out than competing. But, it's a good mental break. So, and we are excited to come back better and stronger.
Okay, for those of you that didn't know or catch that, Geronimo is your horse. Very special horse.
Important detail.
Yeah, and I like to go ahead of the lead, but and you compete, and that's like your sport of choice. That's like your hobby. That's your getaway, right?
It is. It is my other passion outside of course, making wine.
Yeah. So making wine, great segue.
Yes.
Dalla Valle Vineyards. Jumping right in, because I like to have the hard questions right up front, and then we can relax.
Okay.
You've been making the wine since 2021 officially. You rejoined the vineyard in 2017. This historic property, family-owned estate in Napa Valley, making some of the top wines in Napa Valley. Do you have a favorite vintage that you've made from the vineyard or tasted? I know that's asking you like choosing your children, but I have to ask tough questions.
That's tough. Well, the ones that I've been leading the charge on, there's not a lot to choose from, luckily for me. But I would have to say probably the first one, the 2021 vintage, is my most favorite vintage to date, because it was, for me, the opportunity to really pick apart every block and get really down to the nitty-gritty and really do a deep dive in understanding all the nuances of every nook and cranny of our vineyard, which was helpful with the following vintage of 2022, which was a vintage more of being as efficient and fast as possible in terms of picking, just due to the weather constraints.
Okay, so 2021, you felt like you really intimately knew your vineyard more. And so let's set that scene, because you grew up in this place. The top vineyard site where the best grapes apparently grow is called Maya's Block.
Yeah.
And
true.
And you even replanted this vineyard in 2007. I think you were there, right, with your mom when she replanted?
Yes, we had to replant actually the entire vineyard, not just the Maya's block. So we have 20 acres under vine and 18 different blocks. And between 1999 and 2007, we had to undergo a full replantation of the entire vineyard, just due to a number of different issues that made it very difficult to not start over from square one.
Having said that, you were around for that. I mean, you weren't maybe like integrally part of the business, but I mean, you were around. But now you say in 2021, you like intimately knew your vineyard in a whole different way. Explain that.
So I think, the in that time period, I actually really wasn't interested in becoming a winemaker or being in the wine industry at all. So I think like when you grow up around like your parents' business, I think you either gravitate towards it instantly or it doesn't quite connect with you right off the bat. So I was always appreciative of wine and what we did and the whole property, but I never took like a technical liking or interest in it until later on after like midway through college. So then, at that point when I wanted to become a winemaker, my mom didn't want me to work here at the property. She wanted me to gain experience elsewhere and in essence earn my title back at the winery. So even when I came back in 2017, there was a number of years where I was just observing and learning from Andy Erickson, who is our winemaker at that time, who still works with us at a consulting capacity and is a very great mentor and friend. But it was more about just trying to understand how we've been very successful for a reason and trying to respect that. And then in 2021, when it was my time to take the lead, really taking everything that I learned and then picking it apart and seeing really, really, I'm very detail oriented. So getting down to every single detail of the vineyard. So it was a journey. It
was like a deep dive that you're saying, now that my imprint is fully on this wine, I am going to dive deeper into it than I've ever dove before. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Exactly.
So let's unpack that before I even get to the next question. So you are the second generation winemaker here. Your father and mother established this property bought this property in 1986. We're making the wines for years. You grew up there and then left, have master's degree, and then went to Bordeaux Enology School, agroscience. So learned a lot about winemaking, worked at some of the most prestigious, the top. We talk about titans of the world. They are, they are on the Mount Rushmore, or they're up on Mount Olympus, I should say, where you worked at Petrus, you work at Chateau Latour. These are like I said, flagship wineries in Bordeaux. And then you also worked in Italy with Ornellaia. And then you came back.
Yes.
What's interesting to me about that is, so you came back and your mom was running the property at this point. She's really the farmer. Would you call her the vigneron or the enologist? Vineyard manager?
She's the matriarch and the boss. That's her title.
Which, by the way, though, and I'm getting there. This is a long, rounded way, but I had the pleasure of meeting you in person at James Suckling's Great Wines World. Love that title.
Yes.
What I loved about that is I approached your mom and I asked her, and I was doing some interviews inside the tasting, and I asked her, can I interview you? And she was so gracious and nice about it, didn't know me from anywhere. And she's like, absolutely, but I think you should interview Maya. She's the winemaker. And I said, that's great. I would love to,
Yeah.
I love the fact that she's the matriarch, but she's so willing to put you in the spotlight.
Yes, that's the way she is. She's a forward thinker. She is my mom first and foremost, but she understands and appreciates, I think, legacy and being able to work, together. Well, technically she's still my boss. She's not, but we work together in a lot of capacities, but she is, she sees the big picture and she wants that vision to continue from what her and my dad started.
So talking about that vision, as I mentioned, you went off, rediscovered your love for winemaking, and came back in 2017.
Yes.
And then, I think even before then, you still had to earn your keep and work elsewhere at other wineries just to really learn the business.
Right.
And so what I'm wondering is it took you then 4 more years, to which I think in your words or her words, you were probably already overqualified at that point to come back and work in it.
That's her word. Those are her words, not
Those are her
mine.
words. Okay. But then it still took 4 years for you to take the helm.
Yeah.
What
Yes.
what did you learn in those 4 years, or what was the pivotal moment where she said, "Okay, you're ready now, Maya"? But before you answer that, hang on one second, because
Okay.
we talked about land, and I want to tell you one thing. There is a lot of people moving to the Triangle of North Carolina, and the only reason I talk about it is because I live here. We now are lucky enough to be in this beautiful place. And the reason we're able to be here is thanks to Heather Donovan Real Estate. She is a titan of the realty business. And I only can tell you this because my father-in-law and my sister-in-law bought a house through her. And they are very, like you, meticulous people, high stressed, deep feeling. She made it super easy for them. Unbelievable person and resource in the area. I highly recommend, if you're thinking about moving in the area or thinking about getting a new house, you go to heatherdhomes.com. That's heatherdhomes.com, and she will help you with whatever realty needs you need. heatherdhomes.com. You, like Heather, know your place very well. So back to my question. What was the pivotal moment where your mom said, "Okay, Maya, you're ready. You become head winemaker now"?
I think it was after the 2020 vintage. It was a very unusual year for many different reasons. And there was a lot of challenges and headwinds that we faced in that year. I mean, with COVID first and foremost, and then not just one, but 2 massive wildfires. And I'd like to think her watching me under those different points of stress, kind of leading the charge, staying calm, knowing the motions and knowing how to, take quick changes on the fly and quick decisions, that ultimately served us very well. I think at that point, she felt comfortable saying, "Okay, I think you're ready at this point."
So it was the challenging times in your stewardship of getting through those and your decision making that convinced her. They're like, "Okay, you're ready."
I think so. I like to think so.
And the interesting thing about that is also the 2020 vintage you talked about. You had COVID and you had wildfires in Napa. Lots of wineries did not make wine that year, or they sold it off or made it in bulk juice. You were steadfast in the idea that, no, this wine is good, and I am proud to make this wine.
That wasn't without a lot of consultation with my colleagues, other winemakers. On top of the fact that it was COVID, our entire team, showed up every single day without question, without ever doubting our decision making once. I felt like we owed it to them as well to see it through. And we continued to track it closely and only saw the wines develop, further and become more beautiful, expressive wines. So we stand, firmly behind our decision. And yes, it was incredibly stressful because of all the challenges, and in spite of all the challenges, being able to release something that it really tells a story about that year is pretty remarkable.
Have you had a 2020 recently?
I have. It's I love it. I think they're very fresh wines. They're elegant. They have a little more approachability, especially compared to the 2021, which has a tendency to be a bit more austere. It's nice to have the 2020 next to it. So I think the best way to debunk the myth of 2020 is to open the wine and taste it with other, whether it be consumers or individuals in the trade. And I'd say 10 times out of 10, they're quite surprised, because their perception of the vintage is one thing, but then to be able to taste the wine doesn't lie. The wine speaks for itself.
For sure. Well said. I want to talk about the business side of things, but I want to switch gears before we get there, because your story is pretty unbelievable. Your mom, Naoko, is Japanese. Your dad was Italian, grew up in somewhat of a winemaking family. And then somehow they met in the West Indies.
They met in Tokyo.
Oh, they met in Tokyo.
They used to live. They used to live in the West Indies, but they met in Tokyo. Because my father's previous life before wine was in the scuba business. So he had a company called Scuba Pro that he co-founded.
Okay.
Yeah.
What an interesting transition.
Yeah, he was a very interesting man.
Yeah. Then what were they doing that the scuba company in the West Indies?
At that point, he had sold the company, so they were living in the West Indies, and I think my dad had the opportunity to invest in like a relay and chateau, much like the Farrington where you are now.
There you
go.
The
similar type of business, and the choices were New Orleans or the Napa Valley. So you can tell which one they decided to go for. But when they arrived in Napa Valley, because we are protected in the ag preserve, there's not a lot of space to create this type of property. So the idea then shifted into wine because of my dad's heritage in the wine industry, coming upon this piece of land that was, stunningly beautiful. Had basically nothing on it apart from a couple acres of vines, old Zinfandel vines. But the view, it was really what captivated them. And then being Italians always want to be up on the hillside. So that's where the idea sparked for them to get into the wine industry.
Yeah, it's like that old Tuscany battle, right? Like that mindset, whereas you always have to be watching out for the Sienese or the Florentines.
Right.
Right? Because they're always at battle.
Yeah. Exactly. And then to be able to have the potential to create a great wine of the world, and seeing the potential on the site, they had that vision basically from day one when they started making wine.
And I just think about that. So in the history of the Napa Valley, right? Like you think about where it was at that time in the late 80s, America was somewhat still, I would say, a youthful wine drinking culture at that point. I mean, you had Robert Parker, right? And he made his bones over the 82 Bordeaux vintage that he wrote about. And you had the Tasting of Paris then, which I'm not sure anybody knew about really in the United States at that time until George Taber's book came out. But I also think about the historic wineries of Napa. And actually, we had John Olney, who makes Ridge wines, on last week.
That's
and
great.
I actually asked them if they were doing a first growth of Napa Valley, or actually of America, who would be on it. And bury the lead, but you were not mentioned in it.
That's okay.
Yeah. But I think here's my theory is, like, you think about Engelnook, Martha's Vineyard, Montebello, all of these historic properties were started in the 60s and the 70s.
Right.
And you guys you didn't start until the late 80s. So I think that's the only reason you're probably not in there. So maybe at this point you'd be like a second growth.
Yeah, I mean, because look, when they did the first growth classifications in 1855 in Bordeaux, I mean, you look at the sites that are first growths today, those are sites that were able to produce wine of high quality in both challenging years and good vintages. So to be able, I think it's really site dependent. Sure. I think if you're going off of kind of what his classification would be, you're looking at larger, more historical wineries, but don't necessarily have just one wine of a singular place. It's a little bit different than the Bordelais model, where Ridge is making a lot of wines from all over Northern California and other, Heights, Inglenook. Yeah, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, the Montebello would be like the first growth, I guess, right?
Right, the one vineyard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're looking at singular sites, for sure. And then I would argue that, it's if you're going to do a first growth classification, and then it would cause obviously an uproar in California. That's not a very American way of doing things, but you would need to keep it maintained to one area. So Montebello Vineyard is nowhere close to the Napa Valley, so it's hard
Right.
to make that comparison. But I think it's more like apples and oranges in my eyes.
Yeah, it's the Cabernet based American, same state, but yeah, it's definitely not. It would be more like I don't know, making like Cabernet in Bordeaux and comparing it to, yeah, to your point, like Cabernet Franc in the Loire Valley or whatever. Let's talk about that and the Napa Valley and the future of the Napa Valley. You and your parents were, I guess, had the foresight enough to not only plant Cabernet Sauvignon, but you planted a lot of Cabernet Franc, a little Petit Verdot. What do you think was this thinking behind that? And then what do you think is the future of plantings in Napa Valley for new vineyards or for replanting, considering climate change and all of this?
Yeah. So when my parents planted a vineyard in '82, they started with Cabernet Sauvignon and Cabernet Franc. But we also had a couple other grapes that we no longer have planted on the property. So we had Merlot as well as Sangiovese, because my father, being Italian, wanted to plant some Sangiovese. So there was a little bit of trial and error in the beginning, but what we saw from the beginning consistently was the strength of the Cabernet Franc as well as Cabernet Sauvignon on these volcanic soils. So Merlot, it was just a little too warm, too good of drainage, and it was not really suitable. So that went away. The Sangiovese, we pulled out in 2000. That was a very challenging grape to grow, and I don't know that it really thrived where we had it planted. So instead, we added more Cabernet Franc, and then we added Petit Verdot as well. So I think a little bit of trial and error, and I think Cabernet certainly for me is a very versatile grape. It can grow in a number of different climates and can tolerate quite a bit of heat, from my experience, as well as cooler conditions. And as Cabernet Franc is a great blending tool and can add back, freshness and lift, and aromatic complexity as needed. So we love blending with our Cabernet Franc. In every wine we make, we always utilize Cabernet Franc. So in terms of, as
like
climate,
a high amount of Cabernet Franc, like sometimes up to 40% or something like that in some of the, like
for the Maya bottling, yes. For the Cabernet, obviously, it's always limited to 25% max. But the Maya bottling is typically in the 40% to 50% range.
And just to
Cabernet
break
Franc.
that down for the listeners who might be like, oh, so what's the difference? Like, in your words, what does the Cabernet Franc add to the Cabernet Sauvignon?
So I think, the way our Cabernet Sauvignon behaves by itself, it tends to be very linear, very focused. The tannin profile has a lot of tension in it. And what the Cabernet Franc can do is broaden itself on the palate as the wine goes through, as you're tasting it. You build layers of aromatics in addition to the Cabernet Sauvignon. And I believe it can also add back some natural acidity into the wine and just adds more lift and can bring it into balance. Where Cabernet can become quite hedonistic, the Franc can kind of bring it a little bit of a lift to it.
So to break that down, Cabernet in the Napa Valley can get like plushy and like big, broad chested or whatever, and like a little over the top, and then the Cabernet comes in and kind of like round or makes the edges a little sharper.
Yeah, I think the Franc, it just for me gives the wine more personality, and it makes it a more compelling wine in general for us. If you can make a wine more interesting and give it more complexity, why? There's no reason not to do that. Yeah.
And it makes sense, right? Like, you guys are almost old world winemakers, and back to the history of Napa Valley. And by the way, thank you. That's right. You established in 1982. I think your first vintage was 86. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes.
In the original, the Bordeaux model has always been to blend wines, right? The 5 Bordeaux varietals. Whereas in the Napa Valley, it seemed to me like in the 70s, 60s, maybe even early 80s, it was this thing where everyone was like, oh, I want to make mono single varietal Cabernet Sauvignon.
Well, I think it was an easier way to have, as we talked about earlier, the American consumer not coming from a wine culture. It was easier to understand a wine that's Cabernet Sauvignon than a wine that's, from Pauillac or from Saint-Emilion. People don't know what grapes inside inside the bottle unless you just inherently are, know what grapes are planted and what goes into it. So I think from like a marketing and sales standpoint, it also made sense, and it made it more straightforward for a consumer to understand. Oh, that's a Cabernet from Oakville or Cabernet from Rutherford.
Yeah, because we are really varietally driven in this country versus France,
We are.
which is different. You would be thought of in the marketing speak as a cult winery almost. Also, you make almost, what is it, like a total of, is it 3,000 cases?
Yes, average. Yeah.
That's a really small winery, actually.
It's pretty small.
Yeah. So to have that footprint that you have as far as like notoriety, I'll use the word fame, although you probably don't like that word.
No.
But yeah, I'll just say amongst like wine professionals that your name is golden, right? It's very well respected, and I think you've said it before. You said it in our previous interview. The things that set you apart is that you guys are stewards of the land. You're true farmers. You're really in an estate-driven winery in the truest sense of the word. Take me into how a Napa Valley wine of your ilk gets priced. Does it look at the market? Obviously, you have farming in it. I don't need you to give me margins or like specifics, but like,
right.
Because I have this conversation with people outside of the wine business, and they're like, "Oh, well, what does it matter? Your costs are fixed, right? You have tractors, and then you pick this, and then like at some point it's just all the same, and then it's just marketing speak." And I push back on that, of course. So like,
yeah.
Take me through that, because you've seen it more intimate than anybody else. Like, especially with some of the new projects that you've come out with. What factors go into the pricing of a Napa Valley wine at your level?
So yeah, anytime you own a small business, especially in California, it's very expensive to operate a small business and to do anything at a high level of quality like we do. So, we're really not setting a budget in terms of what's needed in the vineyard, what's needed in the winery. We just finished a full renovation of our original facility from the 80s. So that's a significant cost, and it's an investment that's important to guarantee that we can be able to continue to operate and push the envelope in terms of quality and really making high level wines every year. That's not inexpensive. And then, of course, after that, like the resources to get the wines out, shipping, storage. There's a lot of different factors that go into it. So also being small and limited in quantity, it's supply and demand as well. So I would say, our wines are very expensive, but the quality behind it takes a lot of resources and effort and time and energy and cost to get to that point.
And I agree with you. I am going to push back from the consumer who is frugal, right? And they're going to, from their point of view, they're going to say, "Oh, well, I mean," and not that there's any inexpensive Napa Valley wines anymore, but they're going to say, "Oh, well, those costs are the same, right? If you're a Napa Valley winery I'm making this up, $30 Cabernet, arguably your costs are the same, right?"
Yeah, you could argue. Sure, if you're buying bulk wine and paying just basically, bulk wine on the market, it costs you, anywhere from $20 to $50, $60 a gallon at the most, where, cost of producing wine per gallon is, starts for us of like in the $100 and more category. So that's already a really inexpensive way to get to a $30 Cabernet. If you don't have any facilities, if you don't own a winery and have to pay any regulatory costs for maintenance, permitting, etc. Yeah, I would say, yeah, you can do it for a lot cheaper. But we want to do everything in the right way and the best way possible, and that costs money. Also, of course, like with anything that's scalable, when you have quantities, to scale, your cost of production goes down. And so this just economically, yeah, that makes sense. If you're making a $30 Cabernet and you're producing 50,000 cases of it, it's a pretty good business.
You just made my editing really easy there. Well said. Eric, clip that. And you reminded me of another question I was going to ask, because you strike me as an extremely calm person. Maybe it's like the swan looks very calm above the water and very underneath, like everything's going chaotically.
Underneath.
Yeah, I don't know. What was the last thing where you got you angry? Like you raised your voice?
What ruffled my feathers a little bit was actually at the James Suckling tasting. There was this, old, of course, like, let's say boomer-aged gentleman who came up to me and asked, how much the wine costs. And I told him the price. And he's just scoffed. He was like, psst. And he looked at me and was like, no wine should cost more than $40 to $50. Everything after that is like marketing and BS.
He must have been the same guy that I was having the conversation with.
Probably. It probably was. I was like, wow, you must own a winery and own vineyards and know what it's like to run a business. Hats off to you. Like, great job. So I don't raise my voice really ever, very rarely, but it definitely, I punch back with cutting words. So said I'm not really nice. I was calm. I tried to be polite, but I said, you know what? Thank you so much. Like, there's plenty of other wines in that price category. I encourage you to go seek them out.
To go try them.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk personal life for a little bit, and you can tell me I don't want to talk that, because you're married to a Master Sommelier.
I am, yes.
Do you guys butt heads about like do you ever ask his opinion on your wine?
I do, and we disagree quite a bit about wines at home. I think it makes for a healthy marriage to not align, not be in agreement on everything, especially if you're in the same industry. I think that's part of the beauty of the wine industry is there's so much subjectivity. And everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and not that one is right or wrong. It's just different. And we disagree quite a bit about when it comes to wine, but that's okay. I respect it. I respect his opinion. He respects my opinion, and it always comes from a place of respect. But I think it's important to stay true to what you believe in and what you love.
All right, I got to know give me the details. Like, what thing you guys disagree about when it comes to wine? Like, are you more of like old world in nature, or he's more new world? Or you like what types of things in wine do you guys disagree about?
I think I have a tendency, because I come from the winemaking and production side of things. I am a little more forgiving when it comes to like certain vintages or flaws in a wine. And I can understand and appreciate the challenges behind that, where I think it's easier if you have never done that to be critical of it, because you haven't had that experience yourself, and maybe you just don't have the same empathy as someone who has been through it. So I think that's tends to be an area where we can disagree. We both love, old world and new world wine. He has, an immense knowledge, of course, of every wine region and type of wine in the world, like far beyond what I know. But when it comes to technicalities, that's more my specialty. So different areas of focus, and the areas where we can agree, but areas we can disagree too.
Can I please put a microphone, a recorder on the dinner table when he hears that snippet of the episode about you telling him that he doesn't have empathy about
I
winemaking.
didn't say that he doesn't have empathy. I said I have more empathy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Don't start another fight.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. He definitely, I mean, I obviously love him to death, love of my life. I respect him immensely, and he has a great wealth of knowledge, not just in wine, but in a lot of, I feel like I've learned a lot from him in terms of business acumen, where I was so pigeonholed in production. And in order to be successful in this business, as a winery owner, it is really important to also understand the business side. And he has provided me with so much insight and opened my eyes to much more than I ever realized.
How'd you guys meet?
We met at a photo shoot for Food and Wine magazine.
Okay.
Yeah, several years ago. And then started off as friends, actually, really, and then it just naturally grew into a relationship. And then pandemic happened, and that'll make you or break you really quickly. So we obviously survived that, and here we are today.
If you can survive a global pandemic, then that would be testworthy. I have to imagine, and I don't want this to sound gossipy, but like, you are a very public figure. You're almost like a princess of Napa Valley.
Oh God, I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like, you grew up in this historic place. Your name is on the best. Your first name, Maya, is on the best plot of land there. And then you've gone off to be like the ambassador at these unbelievably historic other chateaus. So, and like I'm assuming everybody in the Napa circle knows you. You worked at Mondavi Winery when you came back, so it's like you knew all the
in the tasting room. Yeah, a lowly tasting room employee.
A lowly tasting room, but like, what great character building and stuff that also built. I don't even know exactly where I'm going with that, but I'm guessing there was a lot of time where you're like, I don't want to be in a relationship because it's too like public profile. Or it would be hard.
I don't really see myself that way. I don't think, I think it's like, sure, people in the industry and in the Valley know who I am, but I don't know. I just don't really see myself like, I'm like, why would anyone be interested in my life?
I guess that's what makes you so grounded. And like, you're into the winemaking, that's it. And then everything else that happens it happens.
Yeah, look, I'm not curing cancer. I bring people happiness, but I don't think I do anything that's like truly earth-shattering and groundbreaking. I love my job. I feel passionate about this property. My father, who's no longer with us, I feel, maybe this is too woo-woo, but I feel still very connected to him by being able to continue on the family business. It's an incredible privilege, and I don't take that lightly. I think about it every day as, I very humble. I'm very privileged, and my job is to preserve and maintain and elevate any way I can our wines into the next generation.
Yeah, because your dad died when you were 8.
Yes. Yeah. 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's got to be pressure, because it's not only maintaining this land, making great wine, working with your mom, but you have this like legacy that your dad also created to carry on.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I perform really well under pressure. I am a procrastinator, and if I do my best work under a tight timeline or under a lot of pressure. So I thrive in those conditions.
All right. I'm going to call you during harvest and see how you're doing.
Oh yeah, that's like my Christmas season, my holiday season. It's the best time of year. It's the happiest time.
Maya, real quick here. Are you a coffee drinker? Okay. I don't know. You might have already gotten this, but I'm sending you this bag of coffee
Okay.
This is a coffee of single origin. It's from Peru by a farmer named Edith Meza. I feel like you two would have a lot in common. And it's a Pacamara varietal. And so I am, I guess, endorsing this or collaborating with a local roastery here called Carborough Coffee. They're not far from this establishment, and they have two out of five cuppers, which are like the sommeliers of coffee, like
Right.
master sommeliers of
Yeah.
coffee, in the United States, right here. And so it's called
Cool.
Carborough Coffee Roasters. It's Finca Edith Meza, and it is delicious. And so you're gonna have to let me know how you like it.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
Excited.
A couple more questions, and then we'll get you out of here and on
Okay.
to your day. So we talked about Napa Valley. We talked about the varietals that are grown. Do you think that climate change is going to change like what people are going to start planting, or are they going to replant more varietals that are more can withstand the heat more?
That's a good question. I think, things are certainly becoming more extreme. Our climate is changing, but nobody understands that more firsthand than people who farm who are in agriculture. So it's certainly something top of mind. But I will say that a lot of the Bordeaux varietals are very resilient to extreme conditions. Like I mentioned before, the Cabernet both, can withstand both very hot and cool conditions, as can a Cabernet Franc. And and Petit Verdot, I'll say too. We're very fortunate being in the New World. We have the capability to experiment and trial and work with any kind of technology that we want. We are not tied by any kind of appellation rules or laws in terms of what can be done viticulturally. So I think before changing out varieties, I think we have so much knowledge that we learn every year. And even, there's a lot to be learned from row crop farmers like big ag who implement a lot more advanced technology than we do. I think part of the reason being that we are, a luxury product, and we're not. I mean, I guess some would argue that we're a staple and a necessity.
I say you're essential. I think is the word we're looking
Essential, an
for.
essential good.
Yeah.
But there's also the craftsmanship and romantic side of viticulture and winemaking that we like keeping the tradition alive. But I think you'll see more and more technology that's implemented to assist vines through growing seasons and more extreme weather challenges before people are going to give up on Cabernet Sauvignon. It's what's built this valley. It's what we're known for. And I think we will implement and utilize the technologies available to us before making a 180 switch to another variety.
Technology.
Technology.
Like, do you have something in mind or something that they're talking about there that is coming up that is going to be implemented soon?
Well, you're seeing a lot more AI implemented in vineyard technology more than ever. Obviously, we have the ability to irrigate in the Napa Valley in the U.S. And we have a lot of technology that we use to also help make informed decisions about how we irrigate and how much. We also, for us, technology that we already utilize is very straightforward and simple, really. We can use, we have misting systems that are either, micro sprinklers or fine mist nozzles that we can turn on when we're enduring a heat wave that can provide relief to the vines. It can lower canopy temperatures up to, 10 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
And it makes a big difference. Or something as simple as putting up shade cloth. There's a lot of studies and research that's been done that's proven that it's effective. It can preserve color, your anthocyanins, your tannins, and help mitigate that exposure from extreme heat. So those are very simple things that we utilize already, but I anticipate seeing AI playing a bigger role in terms of making it more informed decisions in the vineyard.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Last question I have for you. We're going to get personal and gossipy again. So
disclaimer. Oh, no.
So you're of this like legendary family now. You're second generation. What's the plan for the future of Dalla Valle? When and if there's a day and a time when you're no longer making the wines?
Right. I mean, the hope is to have a next generation who would be interested in taking over the business. But I think, in the meantime, really just upholding the commitment to making the best wines possible of the highest quality and farming to the highest level and with the most precision, to continue pushing standard of quality for our site. So I think, I'm thinking about longevity of vines and thinking about not having to replant the entire vineyard again. Like I still remember when my mom told me we had to replant, pull out the Maya blocks. I mean, she was in tears. She was devastated. There was 2 vintages we didn't produce Maya because how are you going to make Maya with no Maya's vineyard? So it was tough. It was tough to see that. And then my mom, she had the foresight to hold back a lot of library wines, which we still do today. And she survived making almost no wine by selling a lot of the library, which is consequentially why we have very little library wine from the very early, the first decade or so. So really that left the lasting impression for me. And I feel like it's my responsibility and duty with all the knowledge that I've been fortunate to amass in my studies and in my experiences abroad, and apply it to our vineyard and then to see that it continues to have, great health and success for the future.
Again, well said. So
Thank you.
An insight into your personal life, perhaps a second generation, but also, and within the same time can happen congruently, the health of the vines to live long and produce wonderful fruit. So
yeah. And awesome. I think above all, we're very fortunate to have such an incredible team who supports, our vision and feels an equal amount of pride in the work that they do.
Awesome. Maya, I am so thankful for you being here, for having this great conversation with you. Please tell us where everybody should follow you if they want to join the club, how we get in touch with Dalla Valle Vineyards, and where they should go to find you.
Yeah, we have a website. It's DallaValleVineyards.com. It will prompt you for a wait list, as we currently have a wait list to get onto our mailing list. But maybe if you mention that you listened to the show, my mom may bypass you onto the mailing list. I can't make any promises, but it's worth a shot. So as a thank you for putting me on and having this conversation, I will see what the higher powers may provide.
I love that. A perk of the Wine Centric Show to check out. To jump the mailing list for Dalla Valle Vineyards. I love it. But
no promises. No promises. I don't want to get yelled at later.
We can talk about it offline and work out parameters. And then the other thing about that, we didn't even get to talk about it. Maybe on the second episode when you come out to North Carolina and you come here with Axel Heinz to talk about DVO. But you also make a wine with Ornellaia, famed Tuscany property. Mm-hmm. That you have to join a separate mailing list for?
That is DVOwine.com. Yes.
Okay.
So separate mailing list. Separate entity. And then we have Instagram too. So Dalla Valle Vineyards is our Instagram. I have Instagram too, of course, like every millennial. And what's my Maya DV.
Maya DV. Follow you there. Mm-hmm. And well, this is great. Thank you so much again. Follow Maya. Follow Dalla Valle Vineyards. Get yourself some Dalla Valle wines, and you will drink deliciously.